Hey, everybody, welcome back to another edition of New York Sports Rehab. It's been a while. We've been off. We've taken a little bit of a break from New York sports since the NFL season ended. It was a disappointing season, of course, once again, for us New York fans, if you're a fan of the Jets or the Giants. But we are now fully into baseball, and the NBA and NHL seasons are coming to an end or have come to an end in disappointing fashion for some. So I thought we'd get back into it today and talk a little bit about the Rangers, a little bit about the Knicks, and then finish up with a little bit about the Mets. And we'll be covering probably mostly the Mets from here on in throughout the next several months. And we'll get into the draft in a couple of weeks and see how our New York teams, Jets and Giants, fare in the upcoming draft. Giants picking 3, Jets picking 7. So there'll be some excitement there in the early moments of this year's 2025 NFL draft. So let's get right into it, and let's get right into hockey. And I know a lot of people, maybe they don't follow hockey. Uh, I've been a hockey fan for a long time, and I have to say that, and I'm not exaggerating here, I'd have to say that this season was probably the most disappointing hockey season as a Ranger fan that I can remember. Certainly in this century, in the last 25 years, last 25, 30 years, maybe going back to my youth in the 70s or so. Maybe there was a season and I just can't remember. But offhand, I don't remember a worse season as a New York Ranger fan, a more disappointing season than this one. So many reasons why. First of all, the expectations. Number one, this is the team that last year won the President's Cup for having the most points in the NHL. This team went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year and 2 years before that. So in the last 3 years, they've been in the playoffs all 3 times. Twice have gone to the Eastern Conference Finals, had the most points in the NHL last year, were 6 games away from winning the Stanley Cup last year. And basically, most of the nucleus of that team is still here, or certainly was to start the season. And this year, this team is not even going to make the playoffs. And really, let's face it, the only reason that the Rangers were in it, as long as they were vying for that 8th and final seed, was because the competition is watered down this year. So many teams were still in the running that were 2, 3, 4 games over 500. And in previous years, that wouldn't get you a sniff of the postseason. I think the Capitals might have been the 8th seed last year and finished about 14 games over 500. So these teams wouldn't even be in the running. Even the Devils, who I believe are around 10, 11 games over, and they're third in the division. They've been locked into third in the Eastern Conference now for a while, Metropolitan Division, rather. They wouldn't have made the playoffs last year at 10 games over. So even given the fact that it's watered down, the competition is much lower this year in the Eastern Conference overall, the Rangers still couldn't make the playoffs. This is unprecedented. I believe only 4 teams in the history of the NHL have not made the postseason the year after winning the President's Cup the previous season. And the Rangers have done that one other time. I think it was 1995. So only 2 other teams besides the Rangers have ever done that. Now, you could understand if it was a rebuilding year, if they traded away players, that were irreplaceable, if the players were 37, 38, 36 even. But the nucleus of this team is still here. And though they're starting to get a little older, we're talking guys 30, 31, 32. I think Kreider is the oldest at 33. And for the most part, these guys were very productive players as of last year. I know injuries may have something to do with it with Kreider, but it's much more than that. How does a team that their top 6 players are Vincent Trocheck, they acquired JT Miller, which only made them even better than last year, Mika Zibanejad, Chris Kreider, Artemi Panarin, Alexi Lafreniere, who completely regressed. He looked like last year, finally, maybe he was evolving into that star player that we thought the Rangers had when they drafted him #1 overall, and he was supposed to be heralded as the next Wayne Gretzky. Well, that hasn't panned out, and he took a major step back. This might be his worst year since actually being with the Rangers. The only thing you got there to hold your hat on is he's still young. He's still only 23 on 24. So you hope that maybe he can bounce back. But how does a team with a top six like that, you show me any team in the NHL that's got a better top six than that, not make the playoffs? And then you add in, you got Igor Shesterkin, who's supposed to be one of the best goalies in the NHL. He hasn't had a he hasn't had a great year. He hasn't had a terrible year. I blame a lot of what's gone on with him, with the fact that the Rangers have just been terrible this year defensively. Turnover rate historically high. And so at times, Igor has had to stand on his head just to keep the game even remotely close. But you have a top six with those guys I mentioned. You got Igor in goal. You got defenseman Adam Fox has again been nominated as one of the top offensive defensemen in the NHL. Even though it was a down year for him, he still had 10 goals and 51 assists. You got Adam Fox. We thought guys like Keandre Miller and Braden Schneider were up and coming good defensemen. They've regressed back. We started the year with Lindgren and Trouba, who both were traded, and that had a lot of impact, I think, on the chemistry and the morale of the team. But uh, when you look at their production and injuries and their salaries, it's not that unheard of that you had to trade them. It's a manner in which Chris Drury went ahead and did so. And I think that the problem with the Rangers really lies in a certain area. There's a disconnect once again between the players and the coach. Peter Laviolette, if he's not fired, I'll be shocked. Chris Drury, who keeps getting a pass, has made some head-scratching decisions in the way he handles things, going back to last summer and basically declaring that he was going to trade Jacob Trouba and kind of discarding him, even though he was the team captain. And yeah, I know he wasn't worth the $8 million they were paying him, but the way he handled that, the way he handled, just in general, saying that everyone on the team basically was available for trade this year when the Rangers weren't doing well. And so, yeah, I feel like the Rangers definitely laid down. They didn't play with heart or passion this year. They didn't really want to be the eighth seed, to be honest with you. Making the eighth seed and getting knocked out by the Capitals in the first round was not really something that was appealing to them. So they didn't play with the heart and effort that you would expect a team in the NHL to do so. And how about the Capitals? Talk about turning it around. Barely getting into the playoffs, getting swept by the Rangers in the first round, and now they got the most points in the Eastern Conference this year. So you talk about a flipping around of productivity between the Capitals and the Rangers. So overall, it's just been a really disappointing season with the talent still on this team, the watered down lack of talent within the conference. I would have figured at the very least the Rangers would finish in a third place behind Carolina and the Capitals, maybe win a round and then get beat in the next round at worst. But for this team not to make the postseason at all, I don't remember a worse season. As they stand right now, they're maybe 2 or 3 games over 500. They've won a couple of meaningless games since they were officially eliminated that mean nothing. So it's been a really down season. I think you're going to see a lot of changes there. Peter Laviolette will be gone. Chris Drury's going to get another shot at it. I think he'll be going on his third or fourth coach as a GM. At what point do we start looking at the players too? It's one thing, and I'll end with this with the Rangers because I do want to get onto the Knicks next. It's one thing when the Jets go through coaches at a high rate because they've been terrible since 2014 or 15. So you expect it. It's one thing when the Knicks, who now, before getting Thibs as their coach, were going through several coaches. They were terrible for 20 years. But the Rangers have been a perennial playoff team almost every year for the last 10 or 15 years. The only years they didn't make it, they were rebuilding for a couple of years with young players, and they still even got in one year and were respectable. But we're going to go back now. We got Alain Vigneault, and we got Tortorella before him. And then we had Dan Quinn, and we had Gerard Gallant, and now we got Peter Love. That's 5 coaches since 2014 on a team that's been to the Eastern Conference Finals 3 times, the NHL Finals once, and in that 10-year period probably made the playoffs 8 or 9 times. It seems like every time it always comes down to the players. There was a disconnect. The coach lost the locker room with the veterans. And that's when I was shocked when they fired Gerard Gallant. They came off back-to-back playoffs. They were in the Eastern Conference Finals with him in a year no one expected them to do anything. And they fired him because supposedly there was internal problems in the locker room again between the veterans and Gallant. So they bring in Lavalette, who's supposed to be a veteran players coach who's had experience in winning a Stanley Cup. And here we are 2 years later, and it's a disaster. So I get it. You know, you got to find that right chemistry, but it seems to me like maybe it's time to clean house, at least get rid of some of these veterans and change the culture a little bit, because we shouldn't be going through this many coaches. And honestly, I think when a GM has had this many opportunities and can't find a coach, maybe he should go too. But maybe for the sake of stability and, for the sake that he's done some good things and we have gone to conference finals, I can live with giving him one more year. But there's got to be some changes in the core of the team. I think Kreider, unfortunately, will be gone someday. His jersey will be hanging from the rafters, a beloved all-time Ranger, but I think his time has come. Injuries played a part of it, but I think I just don't think he was really, his heart was into it after some of the moves that were made with Truber and Lindgren and saying that he was on a trade block. Mika Zibanejad has slowly regressed, and at this point now, for the money that you're paying the guy, the problem is, can we trade him? He has a no trade clause. I think he's locked in till 2030 on his extension. But we've got to make some changes here. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the offseason. But overall, in summary, just a very, very disappointing season if you're a New York Ranger fan. But the offseason should be exciting to see where they go and what they do from here to get them back in the playoffs next year. So moving on to the Knicks. And I'm going to preface, I'm going to be full disclosure. I haven't watched the Knicks game all season. I follow the scores, the box scores, turn on the game here and there. I'm trying to figure out for myself where the issue is, because I was really into the Knicks last year. There was a battle all year long to where they would kind of finish in the seeding, whether it be third or fourth or fifth. There was a point in the season they could be anywhere from third to the play-in tournament. And I think that piqued my interest. First of all, I find basketball during the regular season in particular very hard to watch. The way the game is played now, it's the defense, especially during the season. They play a little harder defense in postseason, but watered down defense, 3-point shooting from everybody. You could be 7'4" and you're sitting at the perimeter shooting threes. When they do pass the ball around in the NBA, it's just pass it around the perimeter of the three. So I don't really like the game the way it's played that much now. So that's a factor. And let's face it, the Knicks are their destiny was pretty much determined, probably by early, mid-December, certainly by Christmas, 4 months ago. They were locked into the three. You knew they weren't going to be good enough to catch either Cleveland or Boston. And you knew that they had a comfortable enough lead among the teams chasing them to pretty much be locked in at the three, and that's where they've been. So there really hasn't been that much to play for. When they did play the Celtics in Cleveland, sometimes they'd give them some good games and falter at the end, or they show those little, chinks in the armor that would let you know they're clearly a class below those two teams. So it's kind of like their destiny has been determined now for almost 4 months, and here we are, and they're locked into the three. And their first round is coming up, and you expect them to win. And to be honest with you, this first round is like a no-win situation, I think, for the Knicks in some regard. They're expected to win, and anything less than that, I think you'll look back on this season and it'll be a colossal disappointment given, the moves they made to bring in Karl-Anthony Towns and Bridges and offensive firepower. And to actually get knocked out in the first round with a team like that would be, it'd be a hard pill to swallow. I think they're expected to win. They're expected to win easily. Even if they struggle and barely get through, there's going to be talks about, this team being a disappointment. So it's almost like a no-win situation. You got to win this round. You got to take back care of business. And then if the Knicks play the Celtics in the next round, they can rewrite the story for this year more or less. If they can knock off the Celtics or knock off both Celtics and Cleveland, I mean, this season turns into a totally different. The narrative of looking back on this will be totally different. But the Knicks really haven't shown you anything that would lead you to believe they're going to beat either one of those teams. So the question comes back now: are they better off now bringing in Bridges and a great offensive player, an all-star in Karl Anthony Towns, or were they better last year, with more of that grit and determination and those type of guys that they had, and maybe a little less scoring and talent, but it was kind of their identity. Grind it out, play tough, never an easy game, always play above the level of expectation, even when they were hampered with injuries. They managed to bring the next man up philosophy and hung tough throughout. And it seems like, losing Hartenstein was a big deal. I don't think losing Randall I mean, he did play a tough style of play, but I think Randall, once Brunson evolved into the player he was, there really wasn't a role for Randall in his kind of isolated offense. So I don't think they miss Randall, but I think Hartenstein is underrated there, especially when they've had struggle at the center position for most of the year. So I think I do understand, again, salary wise, and signing him to a longer term deal with more money might have not allowed them to make the other changes. And the other player, I'm drawing a blank right now, the other kid from Villanova, who they traded away with Randall in that trade, and hopefully my brain fart that I'm having right now will clear and I'll remember his name. But he was a tough player. The camaraderie, the whole Villanova connection, losing him, those guys aren't quite as good, certainly as good as Karl Anthony Towns. But from a standpoint of Thibs' philosophy and how the Knicks play with grit and heart and grind it out, maybe, just maybe, they were a better team the way they were before. At least that's the question that's up for debate right now. And by the end of the playoffs, I think we'll get a more clear decision on whether that was the case or not. So it's kind of been a strange season for the Knicks. It's been a kind of boring season. I find basketball to be boring to begin with during the regular season, and kind of knowing what your fate is by December has only added to that. But I'm going to try to get into the NBA playoffs now and see if I can get back into it the level I was last year. And hopefully we'll get to at least a second round, maybe get to a third round against maybe Cleveland, and that would really be epic. So strange basketball season, to say the least. And again, maybe not quite as satisfying as we had hoped when the Knicks made the changes they did, and especially bringing in Karl Anthony Towns. Anyways, the last thing I want to talk about today are the New York Mets, and we are now currently, let's see, how many games in? I believe the Mets are 11-7, so 18 games in. It's still early, and I have to admit, it's kind of been, again, with the Mets, I should know, it's never what it seems. Way too early to panic. They haven't been terrible. They've been at times pretty good, but I was worried about the pitching, and I think they have the best ERA so far in the National League, or they did over the couple of days ago. I was really worried about their starting rotation. Losing Frankie Montas, losing Sean Manaea. I really have never been a big fan of Tyler McGill. Clay Holmes has been a relief pitcher. I wasn't sure what we're going to get out of him. And I was, Senga coming back from injury, and I was thinking that our starting rotation were a bunch of 5-inning pitchers that were average at best, and they are been about 5-inning pitchers, but that's true through all of baseball now. But lo and behold, the pitching has been very good. Both starting and the bullpen has been fantastic, in spite of the fact that Diaz has had his struggles, especially the last couple of outings. So the Mets have kind of flip-flop on us in this short term so far. The offense has been, let's face it, at times putrid, and if it wasn't for some big moments from Pete Alonso, instead of being 11-7, you might be able to flip that around and they'd be 7-11. If they had any kind of offense, if they had the offense close to what we would expect, they could have 2 or 3 more wins easily right now and have a 3-game lead on the Phillies. Alonso's really the only one so far who's lived up to expectations. I'm not going to get down on Soto. It's very early. His on-base percentage is pretty high. He's drawn a lot of walks. Last couple of games, he has homered. I think it's unfair to judge him after 18 games and expect him to do exactly every year what he did with the Yankees. I never expected him to hit 40 home runs this year for the Mets. Anyways, so he hasn't been terrible, but has he been exactly what you expect? Not yet, not yet. But he is getting on base. But you got to be disappointed. Lindor again. I don't know what it is. Off to another slow start. One home run, batting about 230. Even his fielding might have cost the Mets a game the other day. Another slow start from him. Vientos has been terrible so far, and you hope that he regains. Let's face it, he was probably the Mets' best long ball hitter last year. I know Alonso ended up hitting the 35, 34 homers, and he had 27, but Vientos only played I think he missed the first 4 to 6 weeks of the season. He wasn't on the team. So per at bat, he probably had more home runs. His percentage was higher than Alonso. I don't believe he's homered yet. And his defense has never been that good. It's as far as he's concerned at third, he's always been, you hope I don't even say he's average, and his stats show he's not average. You just hope he's respectable at third and makes the plays he's supposed to and doesn't make a key error. So if he's that guy at third base fielding, you need much more offense out of him to be on this team. So hopefully I'm not ready to give up on him. You can't, given what you had last year. There is room for concern there. Brett Beatty is the king of spring training. He's the king of the minor leagues, but he's just shown you, 4 or 5 years, and he's just not a major league player. And the time is pretty much run out. And I don't see him being on the team in a couple of weeks when McNeil comes back. And his trade value is null right now, is pretty much zero. You just hope you can get a body for him. Maybe some team will think that they can fix him and they'll give you a draft pick or a minor league guy that could possibly come up and help you for depth reasons down the road. So they've got nothing really offensively out of Beatty, nothing out of Vientos. I think Torrance has done a really good job as a backup. But the more he plays, the more he will get exposed offensively. I think you saw that last year. So hopefully we'll get Alvarez back soon, and we'll have a strong duo there catching-wise, because Torrance is one of those guys who you love to have as a backup. He can fill the role for a while, but if he starts playing too much, he gets exposed, and then you can see why he's not a starting caliber player. But you got to be happy with him. Winker hasn't started hitting yet. Marte really hasn't done too much. Nimmo, he's got 4 home runs. I can't. Nimmo's a guy that I can't figure out. He's just not the same player anymore offensively, and I just get the feeling it's by his choice. He's never been quite the on-base machine that Soto is, but after Soto, he was right at the top as far as working pitch counts, especially in his first at bat of the game. Working pitch counts, drawing walks, getting hit with pitches, and he still hit you 15 homers. And you look at him now. His whole approach is totally different. He strikes out a lot. He's terrible with runners in scoring position. He seems to have a bigger swing now, and all sacrificed for maybe an extra 5, 6 home runs at the end. He just doesn't seem like the same player that he was, and I'd rather have the guy that hit 14, 15 homers with a high on-base percentage. He's a solid left fielder. You can move him over to center if need be, which could happen with Siri being out now. They're talking about maybe putting McNeil over there, but we might see a little Nimmo in center. So he's a solid fielder. He's got power. He's a great clubhouse guy. He's still a pretty good player, but he's not the same guy he was. Having him as that on-base machine along with Soto, man, I envision that would really go a long way and helping the Mets with their struggles offensively. So he's kind of a guy I just haven't been able to figure out. So as we go forward, hopefully the Mets offense will come around as it did last year, and we'll combine that with the pitching. Seems like in the course of a season, things flip-flop, and I'm afraid that when the Mets offense finally catches fire, the pitching staff will come down to earth a little bit. So, I'm not going to complain about an 11-7 start. And they've exceeded expectations pitching-wise, but I see flaws right now. And we give it time. We can't after 18 games get on the fact that maybe we should have brought back Iglesias. Maybe they should have looked to sign another free agent third baseman. Maybe they should have looked for a more accomplished offensive center fielder. Those are things that if things don't change, we'll be addressing by June or July. But right now, it's just not too early to go there, but it's in our head. So overall, so far, if you're a Met fan, you got to feel okay, but at the same time, don't get too excited yet because there's little red flags there right now. But I think overall, at the end of the day, the Mets are going to be in the running all year for a wild card. I'd be shocked if they don't get in at least as a wild card. But there's some things that you're going to have to fix along the way, at least by the All-Star break. And now's the time to jump on a team like the Braves. The Braves are not going to finish under 500. They're going to get some of their players back. I think Spencer Strider coming back tonight. Acuna has been rehabbing. They're going to get better, and now's the time to jump on them and get a bigger lead while you can, because they're going to get hot at some point in time. So don't look back later when you were lingering around 4 or 5 games over 500 and you wish you had capitalized it more then, but your offense didn't allow you to. So they're playing okay, but they need to pick it up, especially offensively. But I look forward. I expect this to be an exciting season right on through to the end. And I expect that David Stearns, if he needs to, will make necessary changes at the deadline. Uncle Stevie's going to spend money if need be, if this team's in contention, to fix any of the deficiencies. So I expect this to be an interesting season. Will they beat the Dodgers in the NLCS? Will they get to the NLCS? That's yet to be determined. But so far, there's been good, there's been bad. And as the Mets always go, it's not what it seems. It's always the opposite. So that's my little briefing on the Rangers, the Knicks, and the Mets. As we go forward, we've got the NFL draft. I'm sure I'll be back with a show by then, and we'll probably talk Knicks basketball as far as their postseason showing goes. And if the Rangers make any moves between today, which is their final game, don't be surprised if Lavalette is fired by tomorrow. Maybe they have a new coach in place by the next time we speak as well. So I'm Mike, New York Sports Rehab. It's good to be back. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you continue to watch regularly. It would be great if you could drop a like, a comment, just to let us know you're out there watching and supporting us. And it helps us. And if you want any particular content you'd like for me or us to speak about in the future or address, drop us a comment, and we'll definitely talk about it. We'll be getting several guests on the show, depending on what team we're talking about in the future, as we have in the past. So look forward to talking, look forward to the draft, look forward to the long 6-month baseball season into postseason. And we'll be back shortly in days to come to talk more New York Sports Rehab. So again, I'm Mike, and we are out.